Hi everyone, and welcome back to Octopus Builds, where we are building out the Trident project for the fictional company Octo Pet Shop. Now, over the past several episodes, we have talked a lot about security and approvals, and we're done for right now with talking about all of that. What I want to talk about today is how to handle deployment errors in a more graceful process. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to force an error to occur, and then I'm going to walk you through some of the different ways on how to handle those various errors and a technique that you can implement or a feature that you can use within Octopus Deploy that will allow you to retry a specific step or a specific machine. So a couple of changes that we're going to want to make. Let's go over to our deployment process, and what I'm going to be doing is I am going to change a couple things. The first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that this only runs on one target at a time. That was a holdover from when I set up config as code. I was messing around and ended up getting into the window size of 2. I don't want to do that. The next thing I want to do is I want to force an error to occur. So let's go ahead, and you can actually force an error to occur within Octopus Deploy just by making a script step. Most people aren't going to do something like this, but I am going to. So I'm just going to say write host forcing an error because reasons. And then all I need to do is I can just exit with an exit code of 1. So kind of under the covers, Octopus Deploy expects everything to, sorry, back up a little bit. When you run a script or you do any sort of task, Octopus Deploy is running these various scripts and applications on the server itself. When those scripts or those tasks, when they complete, they will return what's known as an exit code. And what that's doing is that's telling the OS or telling the call-in program, this is the code that was returned when you ran this script. Almost everyone will return an exit code of 0 as being a success. There's a few applications that don't do that, but that's because they're weird. But almost everyone returns an exit code of 0, indicating, yep, everything is successful. When something isn't a 0, that typically means there's some sort of error that has occurred. So what I'm doing is I'm forcing an error by returning a non-zero exit code. So get a little under the covers how things work with this particular episode today. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and commit this, and I'm going to create a new branch because if you recall, I have a branch creation policy, and I'm going to say I'm going to force an error for reasons. I'm also going to do a couple other things. So I'm just going to call this actually going to call this guided failures, and you'll see why I'm going to call that guided failures in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and commit this. Now, here's an I kind of have a interesting use case going on right now because I don't really want to impact my main branch, which is going to be my channel default. I don't want to really impact this, nor do I want to impact the hotfix branch. What I really want to do is I just want to have a lifecycle that I'm only deploying to dev and QA. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a whole new lifecycle just for this type of development work. So I'm going to go to my lifecycles. I'm going to add a new lifecycle. I'm just going to call this, this is a dev test, dev test lifecycle to use when you want to test out feature branches. It will not go out to production. Okay. I'm going to add a phase. Just going to development. Add that phase for development. And then I'm going to add one for QA. All right. So what this lets me do is now I'm going to go back here and I'm going to create a release, but I'm only going to focus in on the QA, the dev QA channel actually that I need to create as well. So I'm just going to call this dev QA channel for testing out feature branches. And I'm going to just have the dev test lifecycle. And for right now, I don't really want to add a version rule. But again, the idea is that I just want to have this as an option, because all I want to do is just deploy to dev and QA. So let's go ahead and let's create a release. I'm using the guided failures branch. Let's change the channel over to dev and QA. And let's just pop up a new version. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit save. Now, some of the reasons why someone would want to do this is they might be working on a deployment process and they don't want anyone in the main branch to use that, which causes all kinds of havoc or anything along those lines. You might have a separate dev environment, or you might stand up a separate dev environment for something like this. That's completely within reason. There's any number of different reasons why someone would want to have a lifecycle such as this. I personally wish when I first started using Octopus Deploy, would set up something like this, but I didn't, and that was just my mistake. So we have a dynamic worker, and that should have failed an error. Oh. That's funny. That script step is only set to run on staging and production. So it's not going to run on dev, which is specifically what I wanted to do. That's fine. That's fine. I'm going to run this for any environment. This is just removing environment restrictions for now. Another reason why it's great to have all of this done in a separate branch, because I can go ahead and I can do all kinds of crazy stuff like this, but I'm not affecting my main deployment process. So 106, I want this to go back to my dev QA. And let's go ahead and deploy to development. I was wondering, I was like, I'm expecting an error to occur. Oh my gosh, that happens. It's one of those little goofy things that you kind of run into. Now, one of the things that we can do is we can add in some additional rules in place that maybe what we could have is we can only use a pre-release package, and that's fairly common as well. Where you can only come in and you can only do this type of but what I mean by a pre-release package is that if you had a package with a name of, let's jump over to the channel version rules really quick. I want to add a version rule to this package step. I'm going to design this rule. So one of the common things that we kind of run into is you can end up in a situation where you're just like, I only want to do pre-release tags. And what a pre-release basically means is that this package is not ready for the main user's production to use something like this. And so you can just have start dot, I believe is what it is. And what this is saying is that it's try that again. There we go. Oh, it needs to be plus. Oh, geez. I'll just go to documentation and just copy over. Matches any pre-release tag. There we go. My lord. All right. So what this is saying is that no version at all ever will verify this. But if I were to add in something where I'd say, whiz bang new feature, it will allow that through. So what this is telling everyone is that, hey, this package, this isn't ready for production use. I'm working on some new feature, and not only that, I'm gonna actually tag this, or this is part of the package version that I can send up on something like this. So this is one other way that I'm going to do it. For right now, I'm not going to do it, but I just was kind of waiting until my deployment finished to kind of walk through this. So we had the deployment to dev. It failed. And we can actually come in here and we can view the error, and it says the remote script failed with an exit code of 1, which is exactly what we expect it to be. Now I could try this again, but I would have to wait for and let's take a look at what happens when I do this. What we're going to see is that we're going to have to reacquire the packages, and that takes time. So a much better option is, let's take a look at guided failures, which I believe are stored in here. Yep, default failure mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on use guided failure mode. And I can save this as well, so I'm going to go ahead and commit this. It's like enabling guided failure mode. And I'm going to commit it to that branch. So let's create a new release. And let's go back to the same channel, dev QA. Let's do this version. Now what guided failures are going to do is you're going to see that in just a second, but it's a feature that not a lot of users take advantage of, but it's one of the more powerful features, especially when you experience a number of different transient errors. Typically, when I do deployments and they fail, it fails for a number of reasons that are outside of the control of Octopus Deploy. A database password might have changed, or there was some sort of hiccup in the network, or a firewall wasn't set up, or DNS. It's almost always DNS when something like that happens. What guided failures are doing is now we have paused the deployment and it's saying, okay, what do you want to do? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to assign this to me. So I can take a look at the step. I'm going to say, oh, it failed with an X code of 1. There's not really a whole lot I can do. I can ignore this failure. I can retry it, or I can just fail the deployment. So some users, what they might do is they might opt to retry it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to retry it. And then we'll see that the guided failure is going to retry something. It's retry attempt 1 of 10. And the same thing is going to happen. It's going to fail because I don't have, it's always going to exit with that exit code of 1. So let's go ahead and let's assign this to me, and let's just fail this deployment because we know it's going to always fail. Let's come back and let's add a bit of fun to this. Well, fun in the operative sense. So let's get a number. Let's see. Number equals, I think it's get random. Let's just double check on that. PowerShell random number. Just making sure. Yep, it's get random. I knew that was something close to that, and I think there's a maximum value that we can have inside of here. Yep, maximum. Want to make sure it wasn't maximum value or something ridiculous like that. So I can say 10. So then I can say if number is, yep, it's greater than 8, for example. You know what? Greater than or equal to. So what we're saying is if this random number that's supposed to be between 0 and 10 is going to be greater than or equal to 8, go ahead and fail this. And we can even write this out, right? Host, the random number is number. Because reasons, yep, that's fine, commit. And so what this will do is this basically will randomly fail, which is, so I'm just going to say added in some randomness to truly be random. Now the downside of this is now we are going to have to redeploy this release a number of times just to make sure that this happens. But I just kind of wanted to show you this, having some randomness, having some random failures occur is part of doing your deployments. This isn't a it's not all sunshine and fairy tales for everything that you're going to be doing. Sometimes you're just going to end up in a situation where stuff fails. We have one customer and they're deploying out to all of their branches, and they have over 1,000 branches. There could be there's always some sort of glitch in the matrix somewhere where the network is like, you know what? No, I'm not going to work today. And you end up in that situation. You're like, oh man, what are we going to do now? So this is where guided failures is very valuable. So as we can see, it came up with a random number of 3. And so basically what I've done is I said there's roughly an 80% chance that every single deployment will be successful and a 20% chance it will fail. So if I were to come in here, I could redeploy this multiple times. But again, this is just giving you a true sense of the type of randomness that could occur with something like this. I'm just going to go ahead and deploy this now. Chances are what is probably going to happen is this is going to constantly just work as I'm talking, and it's not going to have any sort of failure, which that's to be expected. Again, random failures are random, and it happens, and there's nothing you can really do about it except just kind of handle it with a guided failure mode. Guided failures are also very valuable for if you have deploying to a number of machines all at once and you want to maybe remove that machine from the deployment and deploy later. You can ignore that machine, you can ignore the step, or any number of those different reasons. So it's not going to be behaving fine. So let's invert this really quick. Let's just say 5. There's roughly a 50-50 shot. 50-50 shot of failing, give or take. If you know anything about computer science and random numbers, it's not truly random. There's pseudo randomness just because computers, they don't handle randomness very well. Like, you have to program in that randomness. So let's add back in dev QA. So you have to add back in that randomness on something like that. It's not the end of the world. It's just rather annoying at times. Yeah, again, guided failures is one of the more hidden features of Octopus Deploy, but once you start configuring it and you use it, it can be very, very valuable, especially as you encounter more and more of those random type of failures. If the failure occurs because we had a failure, perfect. If the failure occurs because of a something that had to be related to the deployment, or the package failed, or any number of those reasons, then yes, you're just going to have to fail the release. This is really designed to handle those one-off types of things that you can never really expect to occur. Retry attempt, it's probably going to, now I bet it's always going to fail. The random number is 5. And so this could happen where, the tentacle is down and nothing is working, and you just need to constantly retry until that tentacle comes back online. That doesn't happen very often, thankfully. Now naturally it's going to always fail. So, but that is, in a nutshell, how you can add in a bit of randomness into your deployment process if you want to test this out yourself. What I'm going to be doing is I am going to go ahead and I am going to remove this from my deployment process, and I'm going to I'm going to change this basically back to staging and production, and can omit this, removing the random failures, but I'm going to keep my deployment access. I'm going to keep everything turned on in terms of the guided failures. So off camera, what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge this change into source control. Yeah, I'm going to do that off camera. I'm going to merge this change using a pull request, and then I'll get everything as I expect it to work. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.